is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Dr. Brian Gray, DDS, MAGD. His forte is aesthetic reconstruction with an emphasis on cosmetic ceramic restorations. He graduated from Georgetown University School of Dentistry in 1986. I'm not going to bring it up that they closed it the year later, and I don't know if that was because of you or your buddies. Sounds like you guys got into some big trouble, and when he participated in the first International Dental Student Exchange Program and completed an externship at Trinity College in Dublin, Ireland. Dr. Gray received his undergraduate degree in 82 from Loyola University in Chicago, in private practice since 86. He's an active member of the American Dental Association, as well as a member of the District of Columbia Dental Society, where he received the 2000 Mast Award for Continued Education, Teaching Excellence. He is a master in the Academy of General Dentistry and a fellow in the International Congress of Oral Implantology, the Academy of Dentistry International, and the International College of Dentists. He is also an accredited candidate of the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry, which I think that one is harder than the other ones. I mean, that is just the hardest one. He is a past president of the Patuxent Dental Society.
The
Patuxent Dental Society and Southern Maryland Dental Study Club, as well as founder member of several study clubs. He is a graduate of the Pacific Aesthetic Continuum, PAC Live, regarded as the pinnacle of postdoctoral cosmetic training in a live patient environment. Dr. David Hornbrook is amazing. Dr. Gray served a 4-year term on the ADA Council on Scientific Affairs. In July, he was awarded the Academy of General Dentistry's prestigious Lifelong Learning and Service Recognition. Congratulations, man. That is amazing. It's only been bestowed on 115 dentists ever. He is an international lecturer at dental conferences on current technologies in dentistry. He has spoken in more than 200 U.S. cities and 8 countries. He is a continuing member, mentor, advisor, instructor at LD Pankey in Key Biscayne, the Dawson Institute in St. Petersburg, a board member of the Texas Institute for Advanced Dental Studies. He is also a member of the Arlington Free Clinic. Dr. Gray distinguished affiliation with these leading dental organizations enables him to bring the most advanced techniques to dentistry. I mean, I could go on and on. Hell, I haven't even started on Invisalign. You have certified more than 20,000 dentists in Invisalign. I mean, what are you gonna do for an encore? You're gonna have to think of something. You're gonna have to jump off the ADA building at 22 stories and free base land on the what do they call that? Base jumping.
Base jump, yeah.
I think the only thing you left to do is base jump off the ADA building. And I called you because you were last in, you're always in the news. So the Washington deal, there was an article that says, we took Brian Gray DDS shopping at a CVS toothpaste aisle. Here's what he would buy. And I thought to myself, well, hell, I want to know what you would buy. And I mean, you're just a hell of an American man. So thanks so much for coming on this show today. It's really an honor to have you on the program. Now, I just want to start with the questions, the most obvious. You're in Washington, D.C. I assume you can't give the names of any politicians or congressmen or senators, but do you ever wonder why you're seeing patients? There's never been a dentist in the White House or the Supreme Court, but there are 5 in Congress. And one of them was actually, I went to Creighton University, and I was on the 9th floor. I was in 915 Swanson, and he was on 8th floor Swanson, and in Flagstaff. And then there's one from Idaho. There's one from Georgia. Have you ever thought about being a politician? I mean, if anybody could do it, it'd be you.
Thank you so much, Howard. First off, it's an honor to spend some time with you. I appreciate it. I haven't seen you in ages. I think the last time I actually saw you, you were huddled in a corner of Orlando Airport when we were both trying to find a flight out after a storm or something. It was a long time ago, but I'll forever remember it. And it just it was burned in my mind. I need to make a correction. I'm a accreditation candidate. I'm not accredited with the Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry. It's, as you know, it's a challenging and ongoing process, but it's one of those things that I really want to tick the boxes on and complete. It's so funny. I was talking with my wife, who's also a dentist, and my best friend. And the reason is that we have two separate practices. So we like to say we have two practices in one marriage. But we were talking about just the challenges of the AACD accreditation, and just some of the nefarious things that can happen along the way. So I just wanted to clear that up.
I just want to give one advice on the accreditation. But I don't know if you know this, but I got my Eagle Scout and my black belt on eBay for $9.99, and I saw a fellowship in the AACD on that, so I picked up all three. They had a 3-for-1. But anyway, continue.
I think you really do have your Eagle Scout, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, the funny thing about the politicians is, it's a funny town to work in. I originally from the Midwest. I went to Georgetown, and they actually closed 4 years after I left. So I was able to get out of there. But I think it probably was some of the fires and other things that we caused that maybe have shut it down. It was a great school. It was a great education, and I ended up staying in D.C. And we're blessed to see to treat a lot of interesting and unique people in our practice. And I actually was asked by a senator a few years ago, hey, you seem like the perfect guy to run for office. And I thought for maybe about 4 seconds, thinking about just scrolling through the things in the past, including probably being responsible for closing down Georgetown, and realized there wasn't a chance in hell I would survive the skeletons in my closet. So no, I love what I'm doing. I'd rather treat them than actually go down to Capitol Hill and work down there.
So it's Paul Gosar, who's from Flagstaff. I've known him for 30 years. Mike Simpson. Drew Ferguson, Brian Babin. That is amazing. But yeah, my God, I couldn't think of a worse job. Could you think of a worse job than that?
Especially, it's funny because nowadays, it's, what the political atmosphere is like around the country, and it's so polarized. And, we used to routinely have congressmen and politicians in the office at the same time. It was no big deal. And they'd chat in the reception area. We honestly, just over the past year or so, we kind of treat them like divorcees. We look at the schedule and make sure we don't have opposing sides in at the same time. It's kind of crazy, but I'm hoping that things change one way or another, so that there's, I think, some civility in the world. But right now, it's kind of a crazy place here in D.C.
Oh, I bet. I call this show Dentistry Uncensored, because I don't want to talk about anything that everybody agrees on. And I also want to explain to the young kids that they don't know this, that it's called channel conflict. When you're asking a good fellow Irish dentistman to throw his friends and peers under a brush, it's just not cool. And then I go do it. But you wrote that article about the toothpaste and all that kind of stuff. And now Colgate is buying, they're starting to buy the new CBD toothpaste oils, and they're starting to do there. And my gosh, I hadn't tweeted that out for 1 second. Colgate to acquire Hello Products brand, launching a line of cannabidiol containing toothpaste, mouthwash, and lip balms. First reply, this is a terrible idea. I don't know of any benefit to oral health from cannabidiol. In fact, it's more likely to give it blah, blah, blah. But is it high risk to the brand when you're Colgate, Crest, Listerine, these big mom and pop legendary companies? You're like Mickey Mouse, and now you turn on the new Mickey Mouse cartoon and she's getting high with Minnie. I mean, does this work, or is it what are your thoughts on that? Is it high risk, or is it just what is it?
Well, I think backing up, I actually didn't write that article. I was just interviewed for it, and it was kind of funny because they did the interview. They asked me if I'd go up and meet him at the CVS and walk through the aisle with him, and I thought that'd be kind of fun. It was something different, and I did it. And then you're familiar enough with the articles, and what they do is some months went by, and then they call you up for a check. They're going to go ahead and they're going to do just a check on things to check the validity. So they don't actually ever let you read an article, but they ask you the fact check questions, and then you're supposed to, just say yes or no or expound on them. So as soon as I actually read it in print, it was kind of funny because there were things in there that I didn't actually say or were taken a little bit out of context. And to be honest with you, it ties right in with the whole CBD oil thing. Kind of like bad news still sells. So, as a scientist, there's, as far as I'm concerned, little to zero validity in having CBD oil in toothpaste or lip balm. But you know what? It's going to sell. And they'll get shelf space with it, which is, I think, the biggest thing is that, the companies are always looking for something that gives them shelf space. The stores like CVS are always looking for new products that people are going to come in and buy. It's what drives them in and what makes them take it off the shelf. So I don't see it going away. I think it's like a lot of things in dentistry and in the world today. So, yeah, have at it, folks. It's if you want to really probably get the ultimate combination, it'll be CBD toothpaste with turmeric in it and charcoal. That's probably going to be the next ultimate combination.
Well, I can see how the young kids coming out of school can look at you and say, "Oh my God, talk about burn the ships when you get to the shore so that no one can retreat." You got out of dental school and they closed your dental school down, and then you practiced throughout the 80s, 90s, and all that, and then they're coming out of school 2020 with $400,000 in debt, and they're saying they're looking at dogs like us saying, "Yeah, you guys graduated in the glory days." When after I got out of school, they closed down dental schools. It was Georgetown, Farley Dickinson, St. Louis, Loyola, and we did great. And they're saying, well, now it's the other end. So my question to you is, what would you say to a 25-year-old who just graduated from dental school and she says, "Yeah, dude, you got out in the glory days, the golden years, and now it's not that anymore. Now it's all bad, and you got out when it was all good." What would you say to her? Would you agree with her? Would you argue with her? What would you say?
I think I'd first counsel her that and we hear this all the time. This is still one of the best professions you could ever be in. It's a wonderful thing. We did. Again, you heard it. I'm Irish Catholic, came from the south side of Chicago. There were 7 kids in my family, and it basically was like, "Oh, you want to go to college? That's really awesome. How are you going to do it? And you want to go to dental school? Hey, man, we are 100% behind you. How are you going to do it?" So I graduated with a lot of debt, went to 2 private schools, but really felt that they were going to be the best for my education. I knew I wanted to be a dentist when I was in high school. It's kind of one of those weird dental things, of course. And came out with a lot of debt. And then I knuckled down and just, that was it. Ate macaroni and cheese for a long time and paid it off. And I don't want to sound like a, walk to school in the snow type of deal. But the debt was just part of it. And it was something that we managed, and it has changed. We've got a young associate that's got just about $400,000 in debt. As you know, that's the average right now. I remember I was teaching at Temple 6 year ago, and I did third-year students. I have the pleasure of teaching at about 8 or 9 universities every year for a one-day course. And I always ask them, the third-year students, they come up around the podium afterwards. I always just say, "Hey, what's your debt?" And it was in 2013, so 7 years ago, was the first time I had a kid, third year, who said he had $500,000 in debt. I routinely see that now. Routinely, it's hard to find someone who doesn't have $500,000. And I actually was made aware last year of a strategy that you may, again, sounding old, but that you may not be aware of. There's a thing that they can do where there's government debt forgiveness. So they literally pay the interest. They don't default. They pay interest on their loans, and then in 20 years the loans are forgiven. And it kind of sounds like a good deal, but then I did a little bit of research, and it actually, what the truth of the matter is, you pay the interest for 20 years, and the loans are forgiven, but then it's taxed as ordinary income, the debt that's forgiven. So, if you sit down and you do the math, you're not really saving anything at the end of 20 years. Plus, you've carried all this load. So it kind of goes back to that, I think, the old school mentality of what your dad and my dad, used to say, which is like, "Hey, man, debt, just kill it. You got a mortgage, pound it down," whatever it was. And that's my suggestion, is to just knuckle under and take care of it. I see it as a crisis, as you know. I think debt's going to be a big thing in the future, that we'll see student debt. It's, I think it's the second biggest thing behind mortgages right now in America, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I do see it as an issue, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. I still think it's a wonderful profession. The avenues are a little different. We see a lot of people going into corporate and DSOs, but the opportunity to do, wonderful fee-for-service private practice still exists. You just have to set yourself apart. You've got to be unique, one of a kind, offer consistent, excellent service, and you'll have patience. So it's out there, but it's a unique model. So my heart goes out to them, to the students these days, but I think it can be done.
Did you meet your wife in dental school? Was she a Georgetown classmate?
She was a Georgetown. She was 2 years behind me. And the short story is that, as I mentioned, I put myself through school. I had 3 jobs in school. I parked cars. I did research in pharmacology, and I fixed the broken dental equipment. It was my job was to, in essence, be like a glorified custodian. But it was a great work-study job, so I could go to this library and study, and then when I needed a break, I'd grab my cart, which was a cart with, drills and all that stuff. I'd walk around the first and second year labs, and I have a list of slips of whatever was broken. And number 36, I always had this crap broken, and I just had to find out if it was a ditz or if I was fixing it bad. And so I went by in the middle of the day once, and and since I was 2 years ahead of her, she thought I was the janitor. She didn't know that I was. So then she told her. So then we ended up going out on a date, and she told her mom that she was dating a custodian, and her mom started crying. It was like, we sent you to Boston College, and now you're at Georgetown, and you're dating a janitor. So we're still married, so it worked out okay, but. We met at school, and it was because her stuff was always broken, and it was because I probably didn't do a good job fixing it.
That is awesome. So when these kids come out of school, and that's who's doing podcasts. I mean, when I say, and dude, please send me an email, howard@dentaltown.com. Tell me where you're from, what country. Leave notes in the comments. A quarter of them are still in dental school, and all the rest are under 30. That's the podcast. Like, are you on TikTok or Snapchat?
I'm not, but I try to just stay current with those terms because I've got millennial kids, right? And TikTok, when I first heard about it, I was like, I should probably check it out, but I never had a Vine account, or I don't know if you have a Vine account, but or that other stuff. So go for it, guys.
My 3-year-old actually got mad at me and took my phone away because I was taking too long to pull up the video, and she pulled it up in like 1 nanosecond. But anyway, so we're talking to the younger kids, and they come out of school. They got some very succinct questions, and they're looking at older guys like us to lead them deal. First of all, there's 10 specialties. I mean, there's endo, perio, pedo, pros, whatever, and they have that $400,000 of debt they got to pay off. And you've written articles on occlusion, aesthetics, Invisalign, everything. What advice would you give her? Do you think there's areas in dentistry that are going to be have more demand and need more supply of than other areas? Would you rather be what advice would you give someone $400,000 in debt?
So I think the first thing is to knuckle under and just to know that you're going to have to work long, hard hours. You work Saturdays. I work Saturdays. It wasn't uncommon, when we first got started. And that's tough, but it's okay. I do think that there's going to be some unique areas in dentistry that are really going to, I think, be wonderful opportunities. And I think that's the way we have to look at it. That old saying that the Chinese symbol for crisis is also the symbol for opportunity. The truth of the matter, it's opportunity on a cautious wind. But to me, if we look at some of those things, there's great opportunity out there. What I think I haven't seen work really well is people who try to be the jack of all trades, try and put in an implant every 3 months, try and do second and third molar endo, twice a year. and that type of thing. And I understand, if you're hungry, you're going to do whatever you can. Hopefully you're going to do it ethically, and do your best. But it kind of comes back to that thing about all those different specialties. If you're doing something that's in one of the specialties, you should be doing it at the same level as the specialists themselves, the standard of care of the specialist. So it means you need to really dig deep into whatever you're doing. I think that sleep medicine is a really, really neat area. I see a lot of stuff going on with AOSH. I think that the whole oral systemic thing is just a really, really cool area. And being honest, I would know little to nothing about it if my wife wasn't fully embedded in that area. There's just so much growth in there. So you got sleep, you got the oral systemic stuff. I see a massive pandemic on its way as far as the whole clear aligner thing is going. The short story on that is that, Invisalign disrupted the market in 97 and 98 when Chisty first came up with the idea. 99, they came out with it. They ran with it for a number of years. Their patent started to expire in 2018, October. And everyone was, waiting on the edges for that to happen. And it happened. Before it even did, there were competitors out there like OrthoClear and some of the other ones. Clear Correct. But
they're gone right now. Clear Correct, are they?
What's that?
Clear Correct. That was bought by Straumann, right?
Yeah. So, and we're seeing a lot of that consolidation going on. So that in essence, it became the Wild West and the doors open. But before that even occurred, the Smile Direct, which is one of the direct to consumer companies, was already geared up and running with it. To me, this is probably the biggest tragedy that I see in dentistry. As you know, I'm an occlusion guy. As a matter of fact, one of the other times that we first saw each other was when you took the first level Pankey course. I think we were in the same one, whatever. So that was back in the 80s or whatever. It was a long time ago. But I'm an occlusion guy, and I'm incredibly worried about what's going on out there with the direct to consumer. And we're not putting the genie back in the bottle. There's not a chance that this is going to be corrected via litigation. It'll never get, it's like prohibition. You're not going to take away alcohol or et cetera. It's out there. And as a matter of fact, at a couple of our recent faculty meetings, I was able to see some of the future, and which we knew was coming, but it's here now. And within a year, you'll see it, is that we're going to move past the direct-to-consumer companies. There's no reason for us to even have to do that. You're going to be able to scan your own mouth with a wand that'll be about the size of a big pen. It'll be flexible, and it'll snap onto your cell phone. From that, you will then be able to send all your data to your own printer that's going to be in your house, and you're going to use AI-driven software that's going to move teeth without you're going to buy a software package and be able to crank out aligners yourself at home, on your workbench or your kitchen table or whatever. This is not like, Star Trek. This is going to happen, and it's going to happen sooner than people think. The challenge is that, for God's sakes, dentists and orthodontists don't even know, in essence, where sometimes to put teeth. And when we don't put teeth in the right position, something's going to give. Either the tooth is going to give, you're going to have the tooth chip, wear, break down. You're going to have the periodontium break, wear down. You're going to have bone loss, muscle soreness, or the worst of all, you're going to have joint dysfunction. And that's where this is all leading, is that there's these people who get partway through treatment and quit. Or we've had two companies, direct-to-consumer companies, that have gone out of business with patients in the middle of treatment, and they've got no recourse now. Or you've got ones that just aren't directed well. And so you've got all these people that get halfway through treatment and they're walking around like dental cripples and don't even know it. To me, it's like thalidomide. I mean, it's going to be something we're not going to really notice for 15, 20 years. And then you're going to have people with significant defects in their jaw, unable to chew and eat and speak. And the worst part is, they're probably not going to have the money to be able to address it, to treat it. So I see a lot of that in the future. And I think there'll be a lot of opportunity for dentists to be able to step in and use their time, skill, and judgment to hopefully put people back together.
So do you, you're a big guy at Pankey, and, a lot of people say that, dentists treat three diseases, cario, perio, occlusal. And when you're talking about all this Invisalign, there's a lot of hardcore occlusion guys that aren't impressed with orthodontist and occlusion. They say they blow out the curve of speed, the curve of Wilson, some pull four bicuspid, yada yada yada. But my question is, it seems like it's easy to transfer knowledge about caries. It seems to be straightforward about perio. Why is it so difficult for so many smart dentists to be sitting in a room discussing occlusion, and why does it resemble more a debate about politics or religion than it does? I mean, do you agree with me, or am I in a different way?
Buddy, you are 100% right on. It is, you said a bunch of dentists talking about occlusion sitting in the same room. It's like the Tower of Babel. It's like not even the same languages. We see it all the time, and I love when I'm teaching to use an example. First off, I think it's more the skill set of the people that are doing it. Where we end up with some trouble. If you and my best example is that I'm Dawson Pankey trained, but my wife of 35 years is LVI. And people would be like, "Holy crap, that's like a gasoline and match." I mean, that you couldn't. And my response is, you know what? I mean, if we can live together and love each other, we can have a big group hug on this whole occlusion thing. It's not really that tough. I mean, the basics are very simple. It's cusp-fossa relationship. The hills and the valleys have to fit together. We know the protective mechanisms. It's when the bottom teeth slide forward, they need to guide off the front teeth. That's anterior guidance with posterior disclusion. When you slide sideways, you should have canine guidance so that it takes the teeth out. As you get older, they're going to wear down. Now, everyone's going to have a different philosophy about this, but those basic principles are the same for each and every group. And if you just start there and take the rest of the crap and put it in a bucket and throw it off the boat, that's fine. Because the most important stuff is the principles that we talked about, and really comes down to, when I'm explaining to patients, three things. There's only three parts that you need to worry about. It's the teeth, it's the muscles, which act like a sling, and it's the ball and socket joint. Get those guys in harmony, you're all set. One of them gets out of harmony, it affects the others. So we just keep it that simple, and I think that we're going to be okay. The rest of the stuff about, like you said, the debates about, the curve of speed, et cetera, yeah, there's a lot of validity to that, but I need someone to just at least have a basic idea of occlusion, and then we can have a conversation. So yeah, and that's in particular, I think that's where we need to come together more. The other part about this that's changed so much is that this really used to be, there used to be a lot of impressions on what people felt was right, and not a lot of science. And we're finally getting really, really great data. You were talking earlier about I forget how we got on. One of the things you were talking about, going to your. I guess I take it back. It was like, what's the best lecture or best thing you could ever do or attend? And I was at the Academy of General Dentistry it was in midwinter, so it's this Saturday, Sunday. And it by far is the best. To me, it's just like the rock show of dentistry. We get the best, latest knowledge there. And the things that are coming out now, marrying digital with the condyle and the fossa, are just incredible, and so we're learning so much now that it's easier for us to understand where the disc needs to be, how the jaw needs to open, and you can take it back to the simple ball and socket, muscles that act like a sling, and teeth, and then from there we can, I think, build on it. So yeah, I'd rather do the group hug thing. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for us to do that, and then we can kind of carry forward.
You and I have got burned in the past, buying bleeding edge. I remember there was Targus Vectorus, and that came apart. There was, what was the one, Art Glass. There was, there were just things. Dicor. Oh, my God. So I graduated in 87 from UMKC, and I went to the greatest cosmetic dentist lecture, and I don't want to say his name. And they said, you do Dicor and cement them with Duralon, and, they're really beauty high-end. So I probably did like 1,000 of those. Guess how many I had to cut off and replace for free?
Oh, probably close to 1,000.
Every single last one of them. So I want you to, so how do you give advice? Because right now, like, I'll give you a class example. When I saw that deal where you extract a tooth, you put it in there, it pulverizes it, and makes it the bone grafting material. I was drooling all over myself. I was on my knees, like licking the curtain of the table. But I stood up and said, hell no, I'm going to let some 25-year-old idiot do this for a couple of years and tell me if it works. But I'm 57. I don't got time for this bleeding edge stuff, because you never know what's going to go on. How would you like to buy that machine, then find out 100 implants placed in a row all failed? No, I'd have to. So my question is, what advice do you give when something new comes out? What makes you think bleeding edge, leading edge, buy weight, or the greater full theory? Let's let Mikey try it. Mikey will eat anything. Let's push the bowl of cereal in front of Mikey. See if that dummy will eat it.
It's an awesome question. So, I years ago I got burned, and it actually, I think, had a significant impact on my profession, on my professional outlook. And that I had a guy come in. I bought a composite kit, and so this was late '80s. And, he sold me the $650, made me go broke. That was 4 crowns back then or whatever. I bought the kit and used it. And in about 7 or 8 months, I realized that every single composite that I'd put in had gone endo on me. And I was just beside myself. I ended up, taking them all out. I was just upset. I called up the rep and bugged him to the point where he finally quit. And then I went to the regional manager and then the national. And then I ended up with the CEO. And he ended up saying, listen, if you really think you can help, why don't you help us, with the clinical aspect of this? Because that's where we're failed. That's where we fell apart. And it was there that I started doing the clinical research, which is, a big part of our practice. We're looking at anywhere between 6 and 12 things at a time. Sometimes as short as single visits. Sometimes, we're finishing up a 15-year study, which I'm excited about. But the idea is that if we take those things that work well on the bench and marry them with the stuff that works clinically, we can get the stuff that's really going to last and I think give us the test of time thing. That's why exactly what you said, sometimes being the bleeding edge or the hot pointy tip of the spear is not a good place to be, especially with a lot of the different things. We get a chance to, I'd say the other interesting part is that probably 80%, it's close to 80% of the stuff that we look at does not end up making it initially, to the dentist. It ends up going back. And that's, I think one of the testaments to the research groups that we're able to work with to see some of these things. And send them back so we can marry the bench testing with the clinical aspects and say, you know what? Yeah, what you're saying about it having to sit there 7 seconds is not really accurate. It's got to be there 17 seconds, type of deal. So bringing that back around, if it's new and it seems like it's too good to be true, go for the science. Go back and look at the science associated with it. See if it's all company sponsored, and then look at the level. If it's a case report, that doesn't really, they're wonderful. I've written case reports before, it's great, a great way of getting information out, but that's the lowest level of scientific evidence. I want a randomized, double-blinded, clinical trial. This is ideally it. And then from there, I can say, yeah, this is valid data. It's stuff we can use. So stuff that might seem too good to be true. There's, a lot of really great things out there that are improving, but I think lasers were initially kind of one of those areas where we were saying lasers could do a lot more than they actually could do in people's hands. And nothing against the laser companies at all. I think there's some wonderful aspects to them. Air abrasion was another one. Air abrasion is like an awesome thing, but they're initially back in the 90s, they were saying, oh, you can do preps without anesthetic. How many times have we heard that? And it cuts perfect clean corners, et cetera. And of course it didn't, so it ended up kind of going off to the wayside. I still use air abrasion on every single prep. After I've cut and cleaned, I'll go in there and make sure I've used that. It's wonderful for that type of thing, but you're not going to use that to clean out a class 2 prep on a molar and expect to have anything that's going to work and do it without anesthetic. So if it seems too good to be true, it probably is.
So what air abrasion are you using? Are you using a little Danville deal or what air abrasion?
So it's funny you say that. So the Danville Prep Start is the checker cab of air abrasion units. We've got, I think, probably 10 of them in the office, or 9 or 10. And they just don't die. I mean, you can see why Danville ended up getting bought out and kind of riding off into the sunset. It's because they made something that was so darn good. It didn't need any parts replaced, and they still last. We tried them with the water. They had the water curtain on them. We had units with that. And we just went back to the plain old ones. They're easy to use. They don't break. They're great for cleaning stuff out, cutting. You can do pit and fissure stuff with them and prevented resin restorations. But mostly, if you're replacing an old amalgam and you're doing cosmetic stuff, you got to get that stain out. And that's one of the best ways of doing it. Plus, the benefits of, you're going to get 2/3 better bonding, at least 66% is what we see to enamel. It's great. So yeah, not that we want to get off on the air abrasion jag, but it's more about let's use these things for what they're really good for. Same with lasers, right? There's a lot of claims about things that lasers can do that, there's some skepticism about. And then there's other stuff that lasers are the way to go. I think we see that a lot. I'll kind of dig up another one. We hear a lot now about different perio techniques, in particular, a tunneling procedure, say. And, I want to see the scientific validity behind how that looks 5 years later compared to other techniques. So it kind of makes some people mad. And, I've made a career doing that. Just, I'm going to tell them what's on my mind. And if it's good, show me the science.
Oh, 2 Irish Catholic dentists never made anyone mad. I mean, that's just a fight. That's a fight where you just ask permission. Excuse me, may I join this fight? Let's go to another fight, because I actually I believe in everything you said, and I don't even believe in sealants. I mean, you're taking acid etch technology, and you're acid etching pits and fissures filled with Cheetos, Doritos, and whatever, and then you're bonding to that, whereas I take that Danville micro etcher and spray that out, and when you use the nice micro etcher, you were in Denton 100% of the time, so they were all preventive resin restorations. And then when I go look at the research, I mean, most research says that half the sealants fail within a year. So is sealants still even a thing? I mean, are you bonding, or do they test these bonding agents to Doritos and Lay's potato chips?
So it's a great question, because really what we're doing is we're, can't think of the term right now. We're semantics. We're using semantics. So we place sealants all the time in our office, but my sealant is a preventive resin restoration. So we have a technique. You have to use air abrasion to open up and clean that fissure. You're going to etch. You're going to bond. And then you're going to put, I don't care, whatever, low viscous material in there that is going to flow and seal it up. In essence, it's a sealant. It's really a preventive resin restoration. And that's why sealants have such a bad, reputation, is that there was a company, about 10 years ago that was going around saying that you could use this hydrophilic sealant material and you didn't need to even etch. And, once again, I had to call bullshit. I'm like, not a chance. There's not a chance that is going to, you're not bonding to a smear layer and having something stick. It's baloney. Don't buy it, especially if the smear layer is full of Doritos and Cheetos, like you're saying. So it's got to be clean. You have to have really good enamel to be able to do it. Follow those rules. You're going to be all set. If not, it's going to be the type of sealant that you're talking about, which has above 60% failure rate.
And to the young kids, what I would really remind you, if you're under 30, is that the way your brain works is when you're walking down the jungle and all of a sudden a lion or a tiger or a cheetah jumps out, your brain doesn't work like, it has pointed teeth. That may be a carnivore, because if it ate grass, it'd be a herbivore, and it's looking at me, and we would be dead. So your brain analyzes it instantly, and you instantly fight or flight, run away. But then when you get into dentistry and school and college, what happens? You read the question and you say, obviously that's false. But then you start thinking, and you start thinking. Then you turn your pencil around and you erase and you circle the other one, and you're always right the first time. So what old people do that young people don't do is we listen to the little birdie on the shoulder. And when you're listening to some spiel, and a little birdie says, bullshit. It's bullshit. So if your birdie told you bullshit, let someone else do it. But all I can tell younger people is you always know the right answer, or you would have been eaten by a coyote 40 years ago. You always know the right answer, and then guess who talks you out of the right answer? You talk yourself out of the right answer. Your worst enemy lives between your ears. You know, and I think the older people just get more right answers wrong because we're too old and tired and like, no, that's bullshit. We're not even gonna go there. But you're young and you got to run around the circle. I want to ask you another thing. You have your MAGD, and some kids come out of school and think, what is wrong with that guy that he had to take 6,000 hours of continuing education, and didn't you learn all that in dental school? And some of the young kids get upset that in Arizona they got to take 18 hours every 3 years, and they're like, this is baloney. And then I say, well, Dr. Gray's taking 6,000 hours, and they're like, what is wrong with that guy? Why did you get your MAGD, and why do you take more hours of CE than the government requires of you?
So I'm sure that's probably a personality flaw. I'm probably a CE junkie. One of the things is that I just love, I just yearn for knowledge, and in dentistry in particular, because it's changing. And I like to think in dentistry, again, now we're sounding like the old people that our fathers were, that we used to say, but in dentistry, like when we were in it, man, things were changing at a geometric rate. And, and from what used to be just in essence, like a mathematical curve, went geometric. I mean, it's exponential now. It's crazy. I routinely am comfortable saying, if you're not taking a materials course every year, you're practicing in the 90s. I mean, just, the changes are just coming so fast that, yeah, you can still get by with what's out there, but there's other stuff that's better, that's proven, that's got 5-year trials that show it, et cetera. So I like it for that aspect. And I think the other thing is that, I'm really just engaged with this profession. And I think if people look at it that way and don't look at it like it's a job, they're going to love doing that. They're going to love getting in there and, digging deep, maybe just picking the one thing, whatever it is. It's oral systemic. It's, again, airway, which is a huge thing. It's becoming an Invisalign expert. It's someone who's wonderful at placing beautiful direct composites. It takes time and courses to do that. And that's the one thing that, we hear nowadays all the time, is that when you come out of school at the end of 4 years, you come out kind of thinking that you know a lot. And it's not too long for a lot of us to realize that we don't know very much. And that, you go through that thing, where you get to the step where you realize that you know the whole thing about you don't know, and all that stuff. But I think that's the biggest thing. And I was actually asking one of the students, there was a student who we helped get, who was actually lived in our basement while she was in her gap year, is now at Midwestern outside Chicago in Downers Grove. And she came downtown, met my wife and I at the midwinter for dinner. And we were talking with her about, where we're at. And I think part of it that's changed and made it better for students is that a lot of the schools have gone to, in essence, proficiency or competency. They don't look at, rote knowledge. You've got to get X score on a test. You need to show that you know how to do something. And to me, the best way to do that is with CE. For us, that used to mean a lot of traveling around, right? We'd go everywhere to take courses. I remember flying all the way to see Joe Masad in Kansas or wherever it was. Years ago, just because I needed to get some PROS requirements, removable PROS requirements. Now that stuff's available online, and God bless them. The kids who come out today are able to just crank up and look at something in a half hour and get the latest on it. And our associates, that type of guy, he's like, I talk with him about something, and the best example is last week on Thursday, I said, well, have you thought about just looking at extraction, this distraction osteogenesis for this case, because there's such a big defect in the jaw. And I was like, I don't know where the research is on that, how it's changed in the past 5 years. And by the end of the day, he had like 4 different videos on it and a whole slew of articles on it. And I think that's where it's going. So CE is morphing. I think that the idea of us having to accumulate hours and have them tracked is a little bit different than it used to be. But there's a ton of stuff out there that's really helping to push us along. It's a matter of you getting out there and using it, taking advantage of it.
So when I look at the dental market, I mean, there's so the herd is 8 billion humans. There's about 2 million dentists. 10% of them are in the United States, but they only have 4% of the population. So just for easy math, say the United States is 10% of the population with 5% of the people. So a rich country has twice as many. But it seems like most of it is all flat. I mean, the cleanings, exams, fillings, root canals, it grows pretty much with the economy, 1.5%, 2.5%, 3%. The only thing in double digit is clear aligners and implantology. And I don't know who the hell. You were the Align Educator of the Year 2014. You're the #1 certification speaker for Align. You certified 20,000 doctors in this deal. I mean, thanks for coming on the show. But but you also do implants, right?
I actually stopped surgically placing implants in '93 before a lot of people. I gave my kit to my oral surgeon, and part of it is that I was on the road a lot. And same deal as like, if I'm not putting in, he's putting in 8 a day. Right. And, if I'm putting in 8 a month or 8 a year, I'm not doing my patients a service. So we restore a ton of implants. And blessedly, I get a lot of referrals from my oral surgeons and periodontists that I work with because they do, they get to put the screws in. I think if you're competent, same deal. When I was at Midwestern Arizona a couple of years ago, we had I was talking with the students, and there was a 4th-year student who had placed 56 implants as a 4th-year student. And why? Because he loved doing it, and they let him do it there. It's the type of environment, a wonderful learning environment. It's a place where they said, yeah, go for it. You can do that. Met the kid and talked with him. He also built his own motorcycle, which kind of gives you an idea of his type of brain. But I think that those things are, again, you get competent with it, run with it. Same thing with clear aligners. If not, limit yourself to what's the safe zone, just like root canals. Don't be doing second molars. Stick with the upper bicuspids or whatever. If you want to place implants, start with the easy, simple ones, build your competency, go from there. Don't ever get to the point where you have to call someone up to dig you out of trouble.
Yeah, I believe in the rule of 52. If you don't do it once a week, you're definitely not making profit on it. So whatever you're doing, it's a hobby. And if you were going to, I've only had 2 surgeries. I had my tonsillectomy when I was 2 or 3, and I had a vasectomy. And I wouldn't have wanted any of those procedures done by someone who did it, once a month. Sorry, sir, we accidentally removed your vas deferens. I mean, it's so you got to do it once a week. But let's go back to this clear aligner thing. Do you think? I mean, when I got out of school in '87, the biggest brands of Colgate, Crest, Listerine, they were already made. But I think the biggest brand since we've been out of school for 3 decades has got to be Invisalign. I mean, everybody knows about it. It's on talk shows. It's in every country. I don't care where you go, where they're from. They've all heard of these Invisalign. What would you say to a young kid who said they wanted to learn Invisalign? What would you tell them?
It's by far still the 800-pound gorilla. Again, and the way that I initially found Invisalign was, we do a lot of clinical eval and research, and I'd heard about it. It was funny back then; it wasn't available to GPs; it was only available to orthodontists. And a handful of us who love doing that type of clinical research, we just basically end run them. I found a orthodontist who was doing Invisalign, and I said, hey, I want to do it. And he said, all right, send your stuff to me. I'll send it in. It'll come back, and then I'll give it to you. And I was like, okay, and then you'll tell me what to do, right? And he's like, yeah. So it was great. And they soon enough found out who these GPs were and when it became available to the GPs, which was an interesting story in itself. they knew who we were and asked if we would help teach the course. So that was how I got into it. And again, it was just I got a recognition award about a month ago for my 20th year teaching Invisalign, which is always, when you get a lifetime achievement award, you know that you're either going to get fired or you're going to die. So I'm hoping it's not either of those right away. But the idea was that I saw this technology, and I had done ortho as part of my MAGD and couldn't stand fixed. It was the other kit that I was happy to finally give away. It just wasn't, I understood the physics. I got it. I just wasn't something that I enjoyed. And when clear aligners came along, it changed the game. But it was really Wild West when we first got started. We weren't really sure how well the movements were going to be. There was a lot, again, just like a lot of the occlusion stuff, there was more people's feelings and opinions than there was science. And that changed in 2003 when the faculty started asking Align. They said, listen, you guys are a digital company. Instead of us teaching, and what happened would be on any given Friday, I'd be teaching a course in Richmond, and David Gates would be teaching one in Vegas, and Perry Jones would be teaching one in Chicago. And we'd all be teaching the exact same slide deck completely differently. As far as how we were going to do it. And we realized that and went to the company and just said, hey, you guys can help us out. You've got a digital model of how things start and a digital model of how things finish and a numerical path between them. Why don't you guys tell us what's working and what's not? And from that, they developed the protocols, what they call the best practices protocols. And initially there was about 600 cases in there, then 6,000, and now there's over 6 million. It's the largest anonymous healthcare survey probably right now ever conducted. It probably get passed at some point, especially with what Google's doing with the Nightingale project. But we see a ton of this stuff going on and it improving. And what happened with Invisalign was they took the stuff that was working well and kept it in the bucket, and the stuff that wasn't, they threw out. And it got better and better. So that's the biggest advantage that Invisalign has over pretty much all the other competitors, is that they've got this data from 6 million cases and 7 million soon enough, looking at the movements down to 1/10 of a millimeter in any of the three axes, 1/100th of a degree of rotation, and less than the Newton centimeters of force is microscopic to be able to determine what the tooth is going to do and how it's going to move. The other thing that they're doing is a lot of reciprocal anchorage, which is really kind of crazy and cool, is using the plastic pushing in one direction to help movement elsewhere, which has kind of changed the game. So I think that right now it's still the big boy on the block. Love what they're doing and the research. They put a ton of money into it. But as they know, there's they're not the only game in town, and there's a lot of other companies out there that are moving forward. So I look at it this way. I think, Invisalign is going to give you the best basics and basis for understanding clear aligners. Leverage that. They've got over, I think, probably 1,500 hours of free CE in their, once you've got a username and password, anyone can go in there and use it. And from there, if you got trouble with a case, you're losing sleep at night, you'll find an example in there with a blog and, video and ClinCheck and all the other stuff. So I see that as a great basis, but also, I'm going to swing back around to the whole technology thing that we were talking about. I mean, you will be able to make these on your kitchen table in the next couple of years. So being able to manage that is going to be interesting. But as far as doing it, I say go at it. And the one thing that I also like to share is go at it, but be smart. You had just said earlier about, the last thing you want to do is something that's going to dig you a hole and not be profitable. The profitable cases for me are still the bread and butter. I got some lower crowding. I got ortho relapse. I mean, that's where the fun is. When my staff see me look at, some crazy class 2 or class 3 case, and say, yeah, let's do this. They start rolling their eyes because they know I'm only doing it so I can get photos for a lecture, and that we're not going to make money and it's going to take 2 years or longer, but we're going to learn something hopefully. So don't do those cases. Don't do what Perry Jones, my buddy, used to call the bizarro cases. Stay away from that. And we routinely would see that teaching. I'd have people shoot me an email saying, hey, what do you think about this case I got started? And I'd be like, oh my God, it's a 4 bicuspid extraction case, and you already took the bicuspids out and it wasn't a bicuspid extraction case. It's like you can't unwind that stuff. And now you're married to that patient for a lot longer than you want to be. So pick the easy, fun stuff. I mean, and there's tons of patients that do it, and they're like missionaries for your practice. So we love them. They go out there and love showing and sharing them.
And also make sure you pick up on their body language. Like when you hand them a mirror to tell them what's wrong, why do you want braces, and they grab it hard and they show it real fast and they're really high energy, run out the back door. I mean, there's nothing I like with a young kid whose mom's making him get him and he doesn't even care. It's an older man. He just looks at it real limp-handed like, yeah, thanks. But, man, when they grab it and they're intense and they're on it. But back to Invisalign, they've done so many millions of scans, and a lot of people, they know they're adding AI. They know they're Python programming. And there's people talking on the street that they're going to start getting some measurements for occlusion. I mean, we've had measurements in radiography for interproximal decay. We've had it for gum disease with pocketing, but we really haven't had a diagnostic measurement so much on TMJ from a radiograph. But do you think Joseph M. Hogan, the CEO of Align Technology, which owns Invisalign and iTero, do you think they're going to take their knowledge base from Invisalign and all those scans and come out with some TMJ occlusion measurements? Do you think that's going to look different?
Yeah, got to watch my NDA.
Right.
But what I can tell you is that they've got this huge database, and that's just one of the areas. It's one of the things that excites me the most. There's really kind of 3 different levels of digital occlusal analysis that we see right now. There's the scan version, which with iTero, it's called the occlusogram. 3Shape's got a really great one too. It's basically the same thing. But in essence, it's really just a color map of how teeth fit together. Then the second level that we see is there's occlusal analysis that Invisalign has with ClinCheck, and there's a couple other companies that are coming along with that too, that show you heavy occlusal contacts that they can resolve with AI. In essence, they can help, and with the help of text at this point, but it'll be fully AI, where you can help to set up the occlusion. The key to me still is that we don't have the contact vector force stuff that we need, and that's only available through pressure mapping. And there's just 2 people in the game on that. There's T-Scan out of Boston, and then Bausch came up with something just recently that they've had out for about a year now, I think, that looks at the pressure mapping, and that's where the data is. And I think some people have figured it out finally, but that the gold mine is knowing the vector forces with this, because that's what's going to give you a chance to set it up.
Do you think Align Technology should buy TechScan and add those? I mean, is that peanut butter and chocolate? Because obviously, I mean, because TechScan, that's MIT. That is serious stuff. And Align Technology is Silicon Valley. It's kind of like West Coast, East Coast, but you're absolutely, brilliantly, absolutely correct. I mean, those are 2 amazing data companies. Could either of them do the other's component by themselves, or would it be better to make a Oreo cookie out of that and slam those 2 slices of bread together?
The peanut butter chocolate, I think it's like whipped cream cherry. So at first I'm going to back up. I need to make
Irish, just like Jameson and Coke, but continue.
Yeah. Or Jack, whatever. The bourbon on this side of the country. But to back up for a sec, I need to make a disclosure statement. I don't own stock, security, or interest in any dental company. I never have. No one in my family does. So I love being able to say I can speak from the heart. I do have one of my good friends who started with me at Align teaching 20 years ago. His dad bought $100,000 worth of Align stock at $1.24. So, and he still owns it. and the kid's got his, he's, my age, and he's got his, he's got a nice, healthy inheritance coming his way. So saying that, I don't own anything with Align. I don't own anything with T-Scan. But what I can tell you is that you hit it on the head. T-Scan's data, the pressure mapping stuff, comes out of MIT. It was developed by a dentist and engineer in the 80s. And I mean, this has been off patent for, I don't even know how long. But it is still, to me, one of the best hidden secrets in dentistry. They basically just keep the dental part of the T-Scan thing around, I think, for kicks and giggles. They make their money off of, Department of Defense and the Dr. Scholl's things you see at the CVS and, foot pressure stuff and mapping and not on all the other things. But I know that at some point, a scanning company is going to, I'm sure it's probably already happening, but a scanning company is going to say, you know what? We need to marry this stuff, because being able to look at the 3-dimensional scan and then take the vector force data and put it together, it's obvious. I mean, it's a matter of fact, I'd be surprised if someone isn't already doing it. So
but you're big in Dawson, Dawson, your wife, and you said your wife was neuromuscular, LVI. They seem to really be more into tech scan, but I never, I learned a lot about tech scan when I was at LVI with Bill, but I never learned it when I went through all the continuums of Pankey or Pete Dawson. Is that changing? Is tech scan, is pressure mapping, is the MIT technology getting to where Dawson and those guys, the West Coast scan boys are looking at it more?
Finally, I know the Pankey, and I'm more with Pankey. A lot of my friends are Dawson based, and I trained Dawson, taught there for a little bit, but Pankey now, it has incorporated in part of their stuff, and I just know that from talking with people at the midwinter meeting, that they've got it in there, and as do a lot of the other places. I just can't understand why everyone wouldn't use it. Part of the thing is that it's, the learning curve is a little weird, but once you start using it, it's one of the easiest things to do. And I like to say, and I said this at my AARD lecture yesterday, that I think it is the most efficient and precise way of determining verifying seated condylar position, interferences, and occlusal vector forces, be it on natural teeth, on prosthetics, or implants, doesn't matter. You cannot look at the dots and tell me which one hit harder, which one hit first, which one's got a broader surface area. You can't really tell much with that stuff. So yeah, I think that it's finally coming around, which I think it would be a great thing. I'd love to see it happen. They know that I'm a big fan. I know that a ton of people on both coasts are now finally embracing it. It's getting over just that learning curve. We take a T-scan on every single patient at initial exam now. It's part of, I think comprehensive initial exam should include a T-scan, a digital scan, whatever type, that you want to do, a nice digital scan. You need to have radiographs or 3-dimensional, a CBCT, photographs too as well. And there are, Hitachi's had a unit for years that will do a CBCT and take 1,000 digital photographs and stack them on top of each other so that you can literally peel the layers off. This stuff's all, here. So why don't we have that as a baseline? I look at every time a patient, and we're going to jump subjects a little bit here. Every time a patient is in my office that I don't have a baseline digital scan on them, iTero, 3Shape, Plan Mecca, CareStream, whatever it is. If I don't have a scan on them, I've lost the opportunity to capture that data. I can't see what changes now. But if I have that, not only is it a great medical legal thing, but if I have that, I can look at, you know what? I thought it was tooth wear. It's not tooth wear. The tooth is moved. Oh, I thought it was tooth moving. It's not. It's recession. How many times you're very familiar with this. We would look at patients. They come in hygiene, and they'd say, "Are my gums receding?" And you'd say, I don't know. Let me hold a perio probe up to it. Yeah, right. Or we'd even go as far as taking a picture of a perio probe next to it, and then we'll check it again in 6 months. Give me a break. It doesn't work. But we have this cool ability to get these 3-dimensional scans. We should be doing it on every single patient as a baseline, and then at least yearly. What we're implementing in our office is that if you're getting bite wings, you don't get the scan. But if you're not, we're going to get the scan in and hygiene. So we like to, look at getting that on a regular basis. What could be a better tool for showing people? You named it, right? You said perio, cario. What could be better than showing people occlusal disease and say, yeah, I have my teeth worn? And we're like, no, your teeth haven't worn. Your teeth are wearing. Your teeth are wearing down. Your teeth are chipping. We like the ing, the ing. We like to say, no, this is an active thing. It's going on right now. So that's kind of one of our bigger things is capturing that data, and T-scan and digital is the way to do it. Mirroring those two just makes the most sense.
So now I'm at the end of the hour. So now Kyle can make it a clean cut, or I can ask you a couple of overtime questions where if you say pass, Kyle will just clean it off. I don't want to get you in too trouble, but I'm going to ask you do you care if I keep you just for a couple politically incorrect?
You know what? I've always enjoyed conversations with you, so go ahead, shoot, man.
Well, what is it with on other technology like big screen TVs? When they came out, they were a meter by a meter. They cost $5,000, and everything's supposed to be your 5 fingers. Every year, get faster, better, easier, lower cost, higher quality, smaller. And now that $5,000 big screen, which you and I couldn't even lift together, it'd take 3 guys to get it out of a truck. Now it's $500 and hangs on a deal. So orthodontics has been $6,500 every year since the 80s. And then Smiles Direct Club says, well, we're going to use AI and we're going to use technology and we're going to disintermediate the middleman like Walmart does, buy direct, sell direct. We're going to lower all the costs and we're going to get this thing down to $2,500. And the dentist all circle around and say, hey, that's what you're supposed to do for TVs and cars and houses, but not our profession. And they start shooting back. So how do you draw a line between making it low, going from $6,500 to $2,500, getting it out to more people, versus someone saying, well, you're just doing that to protect your own income? So when you badmouth Smiles Direct Club, are you just a union boss for the dental, the dental people? You're just
the mafia.
Yeah, the mafia. So how do you differentiate what's good for other industries, not good for ours?
Good for the goose and not for the gander. So yeah, let's back up for just a sec. I don't want to sound like I'm bashing anyone. I like to just kind of look at the data and then probably let my Irish mouth shoot off more than it should. So here's the thing. I don't fault the idea of minor tooth movement. I think back all the way to dental school when a patient had a diastema and the professor said, put a rubber band around those 2 teeth and change it every day and let's see what happens, right? It's kind of a home solution. And it would be the equivalent, and I use this example all the time. We can thank Heyman and some others for coming out with whitening, and the only reason they did is because they were using glyoxide, and it was nothing but peroxide with in a glycerin gel, right? And then we own that market. Well, sure enough, Crest came along, Procter & Gamble, and turned white strips into, a $250 million industry. And I don't fault them. And if anyone is, that interview that we started the whole conversation with, in there, I say, listen, man, if someone says that one type of whitening is superior to another, I just say, show me the science, So whitening with white strips will work. And it'll work just as well as in office. It just is a function of the percentage, the viscosity, and the time, right? And then, of course, the price. So we charge more for the in-office, convenient procedure. You could accomplish the same thing pretty much with white strips. It's going to take a lot longer, but it could occur. Let's use that same example. Let's flip it over to the minor tooth movement thing. I understand that we can do minor tooth movement. And I honestly feel that like the rubber band around the diastema thing, that can work. So minor stuff, you probably could get away with AI doing it. But we go back to that thing that we talked about, the 3 components. What people often do, and the best example of this is look at someone who's in the middle of ortho, especially in clear aligners. They've got these interferences in their bite. where they bite down and they're only hitting on one tooth while you're jumping things around. Ideally, as you get to the end, things should settle in. You should be able to get full contact across the arch. The reason it's different with fixed, by the way, is that people are functioning on those teeth generally as it's occurring. So we see less of it with fixed because it's one of the advantages. They're functioning on those teeth where you're functioning with the liners in your mouth 22 hours a day. So the simple stuff, coming back to that whole direct-to-consumer thing, the simple stuff, I think, is going to be okay. It's going to work. And if someone says it doesn't, I'd say, okay, show me that it doesn't. What bothers me is that cases that are more than simple and require more than just some simple movement, we still need attachments. Attachments on teeth. We'll get to a point where we don't, but attachments on teeth are nothing more than a handle on a teacup. You need to have, a moment arm to create the proper amount of force to be able to accomplish a goal, right? And that's all you're doing is creating a moment arm with that attachment. Same as you would with a bracket and fixed. So coming back to the simple stuff, if it's a super simple movement, yeah, direct-to-consumer is probably going to work. But if you've got someone who's got a diastema on the top and crowding on the bottom, and when they bite down, the teeth all touch, that's like a lid in a jar. And now what you're looking to do is try and make the lid smaller and the jar bigger at the same time. And that's physics, man. That does not work. You need to manage that case. It's going to mean you're going to have transverse and sagittal movement in there as well to help accomplish it. And you need someone who knows what's going on. Now, here's the interesting thing, and I'm not bashing our profession, but a direct-to-consumer case that's simple and planned out well could be better and more successful than a poorly planned out, easy case by a dentist who doesn't know what's going on. So that comes back to the whole skill set thing. Get to some courses, learn what's going on, bring up your game. And know that direct-to-consumer is not even the end. We won't even need those companies. You're going to buy the software, and you're going to have a printer, and you're going to do it at your kitchen table. You'll be able to do it at your kitchen table.
Final question. Propel orthodontics, myth and marketing or real-world stuff?
So I missed the very first part of that. Say it again.
Propel orthodontics.
Propel. So that's any of the accelerated techniques. It works. It's really simple. That's a cytokine cascade. I love the idea behind it. What you're doing is creating a ball of inflammation. That inflammation, in essence, makes the bone soft. And what you're doing is instead of moving a tooth through concrete, you're moving it through quicksand. But you got to understand the science behind it. So if you don't do it in the right place and you don't do it frequently enough, it's not going to work. It all comes from the two Wilco brothers out of Erie, Pennsylvania. As you know, Wilcodontics is where it all started. And I mean, that was slash and burn.
It was an orthodontist and a periodontist, or an oral surgeon and a periodontist?
Perio-ortho. They're they still are very protective of their method, but so that's why you don't hear it called Wilco. You hear it called accelerated ortho and 50 other names, surgically assisted, etc. The idea is that cytokine cascade is the real deal. It totally works. You have to honor it. It's just you're creating inflammation. That's all you're doing. So doing it right and doing it properly, it definitely makes a difference. I'm a little more skeptical of some of the other ones that we've had a chance to do a lot of long-term clinical stuff with. I was the first person in the country to get a Biolux unit, and we've looked at all of them. We've looked at the near infrared. We've looked at vibration techniques, et cetera. To me, the one that still stands out is the one where you're going to create the inflammation and make the bone soft.
My God, I could listen to you for 40 days and 40 nights, and I want to tell you honestly, Brian, at the end of a long day, working your butt off to hang out with me for an hour it was truly an honor. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And it was just an honor to podcast interview a legend. Thank you for all that you've done for dentistry.
I feel the same, Howard. It's been great. I look forward to seeing you sometime at one of the meetings soon.
All right, buddy. Have a great evening.
You too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.